Mark Warwa here, and I'm with Len Garris, the fire chief in Surrey. He's also a university professor at the University of the Fraser Valley, and he's an expert on marijuana. And I've been hearing, Fire Chief Garris, I've been hearing a lot about the legalization of marijuana, a lot of concerns from Canadians, and as a member of Parliament, people are expressing their concerns. This is about to be legalized. And so we need to look for what are the consequences of this. And you're an expert on environmental contamination and some other issues I would love on road safety. And so how is marijuana going to get into the environment?
So Mark, I'm really pleased that you're here today, and I'm really pleased that you're asking this question. I can tell you that the Canadian Fire Services and the British Columbia Fire Services both taken exception to some of these regulations, primarily the terms that we're going to be able to grow 4 plants in homes, and we are vehemently opposed to that. And the reason for that is that we're going to bring about fire safety hazards, we're going to bring about contamination from pesticides and herbicides, and it's going to bring about fire hazards, which we've seen as well. And so I can say collectively across the country, our associations have taken a strong position that this should not happen. And so I'm hoping whatever we can do here today to speak Canadians, that this is just basically wrong. And I think there'll be enough means in which people can acquire this marijuana that they don't need to be growing it in their houses.
So you're saying you're not addressing the issue of it being legal or not, you're saying it shouldn't be grown in their homes?
Absolutely, it's unsafe. Now, the other aspect, and I know this anecdotally, I haven't researched this, but I've been listening to my colleagues in the United States, and we can expect to see that our drug driving rates are going to increase, and we're going to see more carnage on the highways and through our roadways, and fire services are going to be attending those, and we're going to see more of that. We can expect that we're going to see an increase of between 10 and 20% more of these types of events due to drug driving, and that's what our colleagues are predicting for us.
So Chief, when it comes to impaired driving and a crash caused by that, with alcohol you can test to see if someone's impaired by a blood test, but not so with marijuana. We have no technology to determine that.
That's my understanding, and that too is concerning, so we're not always going to know the cause of the lack of attention that takes place in terms of this drug driving that occurs. Our colleagues are working feverishly to try and find ways of testing for this, and right now I believe the only way to do that is through blood sampling.
Also, you said, you shared with me something that really surprised me, that in shellfish, there was a study and they found opioids in shellfish. Now how in the world could clams are not smoking marijuana?
Well, I can tell you that I just read this article this afternoon, and it was released by a newspaper in the Puget Sound area, Seattle. And basically researchers, what they did is they took fresh clams, tested them to make sure there was no environmental toxins in the mussels, and they placed them in various places in the Puget Sound, 18 locations. And in 3 of those locations, when they retrieved those clams, they tested positive for opiates. And so that suggests that opiates that people are consuming are not being metabolized, and those opiates are showing up in our ecosystem and in our foods, and that's a major concern.
So what I've heard, and you can correct this, I really would appreciate if you would correct this if this is wrong, the Canadians are saying this is being rushed and therefore it's not being done safe, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. Would you agree with that so far?
Completely. My major question, or the response I got from the government about growing 4 plants in homes is, it'll be safe because it's only 4 plants. So I've asked for the research to demonstrate to me that this in fact will be safe. There will be no contaminations, there will be no mold, there will be no fire safety hazards, and they have not been able to produce that for me.
Okay, so it's being rushed, and then there's concerns about our roads become less safe. And they have no way of enforcing this because there is not a technology to determine impairment. So the roads will become less safe, and we've seen this in other jurisdictions. Is that correct?
That's what the research is telling us. That's what our colleagues in the United States are telling us.
Okay, and again, rushing this before we're ready. And the other thing is, Children right now cannot have marijuana in their possession. If the police find it, they will be able to confiscate it. What is being proposed in this legislation, the government says it's to protect our kids, but in fact, children will be able to walk around with 15 joints, 5 grams legally from 12 to 17, and once you turn 18, you'll be able to have 30 grams, which is 75 joints. So how is, my question, maybe you can answer this, how is allowing a child, 12, 13, up to 17, to walk around with 15 joints in their pocket, how is that going to make them healthier?
I don't see the logic in this. The numbers just don't add for me, and I think it's poorly thought out. It doesn't seem, that's the first I've heard of that, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I encourage Canadians to read C-45, the legislation that the Prime Minister would like to have passed in time for Canada Day. It needs to slow down, and if this is going to become legal, it needs to be done right. Is that correct?
I would say that in the areas of my expertise, it needs to be dramatically slowing down or eliminated till such time as we have the evidence and the facts that it's not going to ruin our environment. If we go down this road, we'll never bring it back.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.